Hi guys, welcome to Wargame Red Dragon of a 1991 mod. Um, just general quick update and video all in one together here. Have fixed the audio settings, I believe. See what happens, see how things go. This video is going to be a pretty much a sort of quick recap slash point of interest of units that are notable of the nations that have been previously covered in the videos that had the poor mic quality. I'll be running my cursor over the units, what vehicles they come in, and as I'll be talking about any general units as such that are notable, noteworthy, have a point of interest, etc. etc. First up, there was an update for this mod on the 2nd of April. Basically, the general gist of things is Canada got merged with the United States to form NORAD as a single entity nation faction, and we've got a new nation to play around with, the Southern Bloc, which is made up of Romania, Bulgaria and Hungary. I'll put a link to Stealth 17's video in the description and for the end of the video, as he's already covered this nation extensively, alongside Atez and Sparky Hayes. So yeah, just sit back, relax and enjoy the new and interesting units that you're going to see. So first off, we'll start with we'll go nation by nation rather than tab by tab for a variety of nations, just so we can keep track. So first up, the United States, NORAD. We have a Command M1A1 Abrams. Very good frontal armour, very good side armour, decent AP. A thing to note and remember with this mod is that 50 cals and 14.5s can engage aircraft. Some units have specialist 50 cals and 14.5s that are more capable for anti-aircraft duties by having extended ranges. Now we'll get to some of those later down the lines, as I believe the Danes have a unit that do that. But anyway, in this mod, some units can be airlifted in large heavy lift transport helicopters. So in this case, you can take a Humvee, the Command Humvee, in a CX-53, making it quite air mobile. It is vulnerable at that point to enemy AA, ASFs, even enemy infantry, more so than usual, particularly if they have a high damage output, but in general this gives you more options to run with. Standard command infantry. Some interesting transport options per se. Very nice Bradley. And then you have the Bradley that has one more AP on its autocannon, which and a bit more armour, which arguably means it's a little bit more survivable. Twin Hero rocket pods. To see an 88WW, I believe was a Canadian Logi truck. So you have quite varied options for your logistics. Infantry. I won't go too much over some of the transports because we've seen most of them already in the command tab. I know some units can come in the AV-25, a very welcome addition. Quite a fair amount of people I know of were complaining vehemently that Where's the NAV transport? Where is it? Why is it not here? Where is it? And finally we get that answer. The Stinger C has a better range against aircraft and helicopters. I believe this is the PSAM range, effectively. A little bit less accuracy than the PSAM. Still a decent manpower unit. Marines have a sort of, I'd say, nerf and buff at the same time. It just depends how you implement some of these units. For example, I wouldn't take Marines to do forest fighting with that guided AT weapon. Whilst it can get the job done, close quarters environment with a guided AT weapon like that, with that low accuracy, you're not, your chances are quite slim. I prefer the rate of fire on something like an AT4. Of course, this is personal preference. Yeah, as you can see here, for example, this is the an aircraft version of the 50 cal. It has here it has the same stats as the regular 50 cal, so that's basically what that is. It's an aircraft variant of the 50. Paladin with its copperhead shots. Out of your 36 rounds, 4 of them you can opt to have as this copperhead round, which has a very accurate shot. Particularly good if you know whether there's an enemy command unit or high value target and you want to snipe it. The animation for this shot is quite nice. If you aren't really paying attention, you won't really see the shell come in if you're the enemy. The Soviets have a similar platform for a little bit cheaper, but it can only do 2 shots compared to Paladin's 4. Another note in this mod, as most people are aware by now, you have an option of using the radar on some AA pieces for the good range against helicopters and aircraft, decent accuracy, or you can turn the radar slot off for the sacrifice of range against helicopters and airplanes, sacrificing some accuracy. But it does mean now that your unit can engage ground targets if it comes to it. Again, it boils down to your own personal preference. Same as with the M270. You can choose whether you want to fire HE or AP. If you don't turn either of these off, it will fire the HE option. So select which one you want to do before firing and make sure you have the right one selected. The M1A1HA is the heaviest in terms of frontal armour in the game now, in this mod. It is quite a survivable tank if used well, but there are other tanks that have a little less in the armour stats but are more survivable. T-72s and Challengers spring to mind, as they have 12 strength but only 19-20 frontal, so it somewhat balances itself out. Sheridan Shillelagh is now actually somewhat useful. Now, the community that I play with, because I'm part of the Stealth 17 community Discord, the guys who play in this mod, a lot of them who've played with America absolutely love the Recon Little Bird, as it's quite fast, it's nimble, only has good optics, but with 50% accurate rocket pods and a decent minigun, it can chew through any little pesky recon units that you've got flanking yourself around, or even for sniping high valued, say, soft targets. Delta snipers, these guys are quite evil if they do get behind your lines. Considering a two-man squad of exceptional stealth and they're carrying an anti-material rifle and a silenced primary, these guys are quite annoying. One thing to take note of, which I believe is the case, although people will correct me if I'm wrong, if a unit has a silenced weapon, it's slightly harder to detect when it fires said silent weapon. We had a case where a very good optic unit has been nearby to these guys, and the guy has been opening fire with his SOP mod, and we haven't actually spotted the unit until we close a little bit further in distance. I do know the ranges, the optics ranges, for each value of stealth to optics type, so size. But we've had a few awkward moments where these guys have been taking out units left, right and centre, and we haven't been able to see them until we brought in something of a similar quality or just sheer numbers. These guys are very brutal. Same as for nearly all the other two-man sniper teams as well, particularly if they carry a silenced weapon. Some interesting transport options for these guys. Recon M1A1, very useful in your tank pushes. Navy SEALs no longer carry a grenade launcher, but they are still an effective anti-infantry unit. Oh wow, All of the Kiowas have exceptional optics. Only notice that now. And because of Canada and America being merged together, you have a lot of recon options as a NORAD deck. You could, if the deck permits it, run Sniper Det and Delta Snipers together. You have one do all the spotting and the other does the hard work when necessary. Although it's not going to be particularly fancy at doing the hard work. And you can count them in this. Nice. Vehicles, we're not going to look too hard here. Going to get the right option selected. .30 AP, very good anti-tank unit. Comes with a 2-2B missile. This thing is deadly if you can keep it alive long enough. And another thing that people have been doing a lot in some of our in-house games, I have replays, videos of that coming up shortly, is using Humvee TOW2s in CH-53s to airlift them behind the lines. Now we don't detect the unit because we don't, put a proper picket out or a proper recon behind us. Or just weren't expecting it in certain areas, and they've put Delta Snipers and a Humvee TOW2 next to each other to snipe high value units as they come into the map in certain choke points. Again, we don't want transports. Sea Knight, compared to the other Cobras, has medium optics. And Super Cobra got given its old love back, the AIM-9M. Very good AA missile. Sorely missed by, I think, nearly everyone in the community. There may be some errors in the classification of some units, as it's telling me the Little Bird is a gunship. We have two Thunderbolts. We have the AT close air support Thunderbolt, and we have the rocket pod running A10 Thunderbolt. I've heard mixed things about Velasti, some good, some bad. It's very survivable with 12 strength. It did get an armour nerf, but then that comes at the price of having 12 strength, I feel. I don't know anything 12 strength on an airplane. Well, some of the airplanes have, like the Frogfoot, I believe, also has 12 strength. There is, we'll get to it later, there is an AA missile system that two nations have that is quite deadly to the Thunderbolt, as well as everyone else. Meet your new F-15 Deagle. a very peculiar siege plane. Sidearm anti-radiation missiles. And you get rocket pods, so you know, you get a 2-for-1 deal here. So to do your rocket pod run, you can tag any AA that you come across. And with Canada being merged with the United States in a single entity, you get a lot of aircraft ASF options, as well as a lot of regular aircraft options, meaning you have a lot more versatility. It does mean the Commonwealth is now purely Britain and the Anzac Malaysia units. But I think that's a alright price to pay. Tomcat no longer carries Phoenixes, although I'm quite happy to have Sparrows in place of the Phoenixes. I know many people will be like, but range and fire and forget. It's like, yes, but I'd rather have a missile that is guaranteed to at least hit, and when it does hit, it's going to still do a hell of a lot of damage. We've in our circle, we've effectively called this the bomb cat for obvious reasons. Ignore the Israeli markings. There's also quite a fair amount of anti-tank planes in the United States arsenal. And compared to vanilla, where a lot of them are semi-active, a lot of these are fire and forget. Something else to note, in this mod, napalm does a lot more damage to infantry, even when they're in cover, such as urban tiles. So, where possible, I'd say napalm is a must-have. I mean, the retarded bombs are nice as well. Another note to make is that a lot of these anti-tank planes that carry more than 2 AT missiles do not ripple fire them. A lot of these AT planes actually will fire one at a time at a target, which, you know, is in a way a little bit more welcome, particularly if you can micro your aircraft and if you have evac Winchester turned off. So yeah, it just generally gives you a lot more freedom per se. Right, I think this video will probably be split up into 2 parts. We're going to do Britain and France and Germany next, and then in part 2 we'll do the Scandinavians and Anzac. And then when we do Red 4, we will just literally cover from Soviet to Czech in one go. And then we'll go back to a traditional fashion where we do one nation at a time, alternating between blue and red. So, next up, Great Britain. In case you did see it, a lot of these cheap unarmed transports, again, they're cheap, they're quite awful in terms of speed, good autonomy, and they have no strength. So if you use these things, bear in mind that they are not going to survive at all. from any form of HE weapon. Like most people say, I do really like the weapons icons. There's a lot more detail on them. It's very just aesthetically pleasing would be the way to look at it. We have two versions of the anti-air javelin here. We have the one that we're all familiar with 45% accuracy, or for 5 more points you can get one that has 55% accuracy. I know which one I'd take. Lynx 87 no longer carries rocket pods, so bear that in mind when making decks for the British. In this mod, certain nations that have anti-tank teams have access to transports that are only available to them as anti-tank units. Same goes for the nations of Redfall that have anti-air units. Certain anti-air units, anti-air infantry can come in certain transports of anti-air capability. So here, the Milan 2 can be transported in a Warrior Milan. Interestingly, the British Chinook versus everyone else's Chinook carries a 50 cal over a minigun, meaning that in a weird situation you could potentially engage enemy aircraft with your Chinook, although it would be more of a glancing shot if lucky than an actual serious force to be reckoned with. SAS can come in a ground transport, either the Pinsgauer or the Rover Scud Hunter, which I would take without a doubt for the fact that it has medium optics, it's got Milans. This thing, coupled with the SAS, can be a real deadly force behind enemy lines. Another thing to note with this mod is all militia squads carry a LMG now, and they all carry some form of a decent primary weapon. I think there's only one, maybe two reserve squads that carry some outdated weaponry, but not bolt action rifles. But otherwise, for the majority, they're carrying modern equipment, relatively decent AT option, as well as an LMG. Again, these guys are just meat shields or holding a area as a picket line per se. You can use these guys effectively in town fights, particularly as the motorization specialization, for example, or even mechanized, increases the XP of your infantry, so it is possible to bring in hardened or veteran units of militia in a deck rather than the usual rookie and trained. The rapier has less HE here, although it has, I believe, a higher accuracy, so you actually hit something. You have two versions, a radar version and a guided version. Again, one just sacrifices range and air detection. It really boils down to personal preference. As you'll see here, Centurion Mark 12 AVRE only has 11 frontal, but it has a strength of 12. Some tanks do have a strength of 12. In most cases, that's to reflect upon ERA plating. I think in other cases, it's to reflect the sort of armour profiling they had at the time. For example, the Challenger liner tanks have what's known as Problem armour, which I believe the M1A1 has as well. But yeah, 12 strength, 20 frontal, 19 AP, 4 HE, a lot of rounds of ammunition, and medium optics. As always though, being a British tank, it's not really an off-roading sort of thing. However, this thing is still pack a punch and can survive for a long time. So although the HA Abrams has the most frontal armour, I'd say these things are still the kings of survivability. And you can see that trend throughout the line of the Challenger tanks. Even the Challenger 1 Mark 1 has 20 frontal, has poor optics and 10 strength, but it's still a very survivable tank. Even the Chieftain's got some love. Some of the more familiar, regular trained units are 5-man squads. This one has a lot of 5-man squads. These guys you just basically filter around the line, maybe put them in areas just to act as passive spotters. In this mod, for the most part, from what I've seen, players that carry laser guided bombs drop their bombs one at a time, meaning you can really micro where your paved ways go. And at 15 HE a bomb, that's quite nice to have. Phantom ASF, something I know a lot of people who play Britain a lot in vanilla Wargame were crying out for and asking, where's our Phantom? There's a few other aircraft that I know that people wanted to see in the British tree, but I think aren't here for very just and sound reasons. For example, I know a lot of people want the wonder why was it the Blackburn Buccaneers not in the game. There's also a lot of dual role aircraft in this that are very much capable of being, HE bomber, cluster bomber, and ASF. A lot of multi roles in this. No Sea Harrier anymore, but arguably in its place we've got a better Seed aircraft. Still be highly accurate missiles, still high damaging, and you get 3 of them. Anyway, on to Francais. Now, the reason I'm showing the vehicles first is I quite like the French command infantry. Same with some of the other command infantries that some nations have. These guys, you get a sniper rifle instead of an LMG, meaning these guys can not only defend themselves somewhat more capable than a regular command squad with an LMG, these guys can really deal the damage to an enemy scout helo or even to a light gunship that shows up. Again, like I said before, I'm not going to look at the vehicles I've already looked at. And some AT squads, as I said before, get access to a AT variant of a transport that their nation has. Commander Marines got a very welcome upgrade, I'd say. Carrying a PLAS, very good AT weapon. Very welcome upgrade, I'd say. No Erics, as it is nowhere near the time frame of what this mod goes for. It was a missile system that wasn't in service at the time. Sappers Legion, these guys are very deadly. Not only are they a shock trained fire support squad, they're a shock trained fire support squad that gets a good ground range. Everyone has pretty much something accuracy as a fire support squad. But these guys have a good exception of they have 24 AP, which is the most damaging AT weapon as such on a fire support squad. These guys can really deal out the damage to enemy vehicles and infantry alike. Although 10 rounds a minute rate of fire, well, you get to fire all your rounds at a target, so you want to make sure these guys keep well stocked up on supplies when in battle. PLAS everywhere. Another prime example. Do you want to have the really good, accurate, effective radar AA option? Or do you want the chance to not get hit by a seed plane or a seed platform, as you'll see with the Israelis at some point, but sacrificing accuracy and range. It's interesting choices to make. The French get a hawk, something that probably was sorely needed. French get a lot of AA options, a lot. No Leclerc's here, as Leclerc was, I believe, in its prototype stage during 1991, but wasn't in frontline service during 1991. But considering the fact that a lot of tanks are on an equal level here, I'm not fussed about using the Leclerc. This tank is still a very good tank for supporting infantry or even in anti-armor operations. You just have to use it correctly. Now, a few people laugh at these guys' name. These guys are effectively commando power. If you Google French military unit crap, or something along those lines, it effectively comes up with Command Recon Parachute Regiment, effectively, or Commando Parachute Regiment, effectively, along those lines. So these guys are basically have commando power. Again, the usual theme we've seen before already. A lot of nations in this mod get sniper teams or sniper squads. It's something that a lot of people in the community did wonder why only Canada had a sniper team and North Korea had a sniper team. I'm not going to say Yugoslavia with the Senka, because that's kind of going beyond the level of a sniper team at that point. Again, as you can see, 5-man squad, carries a decent loadout, carries a sniper rifle. Again, no Rafale. In vanilla, it has a 1991 date on it, but it is a prototype, meaning again it wasn't in frontline service at this point in time. Same goes for the Tigers as well. One thing that a lot of us can agree with this mod is it gives you the ability to play with options you wouldn't necessarily play with ordinarily. You know, you're playing a style and a manner that is a bit unorthodox to what you're used to in regular Wargame. Which is true, it can be said about any mod. I have played Ashen Shadows. Ashen Shadows is an interesting mod. However, The reason I don't like Ashen Shadows is there's quite a few units that are bugged out, they don't quite work as the way they're intended. Um, I don't mind so much about relearning the whole game all over again, but for me, Ashen Shadows in a multiplayer environment gets pretty boring pretty quickly. And part of the reason for that is the fact that there are some maps that people host games on in Ashen Shadows that are too small for the engagement ranges that exist in that mod. Um, as we're here, it's basically vanilla plus, effectively. There might be a few mechanic changes here and there, but they're not something that forces you to relearn the game per se. Another thing with this mod is there's quite a few laser guided bombers across the board and a few unique aircraft for everyone. Finally, we come on to Germany. Fallschirmjäger are no longer your elite unit. However, these guys are still quite deadly in a close quarters fight as they're now a 15-man squad. Unfortunately, this is the best manpower Germany has to offer. So I know a lot of people will be avoiding taking this in their deck unless they have no other option but to. Jagdkommando, your new Fallschirmjäger. Still very deadly infantry unit and against vehicles alike. Although the name's different, these guys are still serious business. Jaeger are now shock trained, which I think is a welcome addition. The fact that Jaeger and the shock trained and Panzergrens are regular. I'm fine with this. It really gives some versatility. A lot of people agree that it's quite nice. Only one different transport option. We get Fuchs Milan. So you can have a very deadly anti-vehicle force between the two of them. Or for a bit more, you can go for the Milan teams. Do you go for the 2-man 6 missile LFK Milan? Or for 10 points more, do you go for the 30-point 5-man 9 missile Milan troop? Who also, the difference with them between the Milan and the Milan troop is they can come in armada. Makes them expensive, but 40 points for an autocannon transport might be worth it. Panzerguns are still decent, however. Still very decent. When I look to see what this weapon is, I believe, from what I remember correctly, it's a basically sort of a one-shot flamethrower, effectively. It's not a very safe thing to use, but it's quite deadly. Considering the fact they carry 30 rounds of them and can dispense all of them in that time frame, yeah, why not? this, all the leopards are quite capable in some way or another. Just yeah, they don't have the best gun ranges, but they have quite interesting stats still. Or they become more survivable, like here for example. Leopard 204 is up there with the Challenger 1 Mark 1 in survivability, or even the Challenger, or all the Challengers in survivability, from the front anyway. Plus a very good gun to boot, and a lot more mobile than the Challengers. And the Leopard 204 is a very scary thing in this mod if used correctly. Weasel Recon, which if you wanted to you could bring in a CX-53, which does have a MG3 machine gun, which again is something else that a lot of people I know wanted, you know, myself included. We wanted some level of machine gun or weapon on the CX-53, because in vanilla, when you're paying 20 points for a transport helo that, yeah, okay, has good autonomy, good speed, but after that it does nothing. You know, it's good strength, good speed, good autonomy, and you're sitting there going, okay, apart from being a picket line now, or maybe a makeshift transport or even a rescue unit, what do I use this thing for? At least now it has some ability to shoot back. Also has poor optics, meaning it can actually somewhat spot things. Well, I say spot things, you have to be point blank in the face of the enemy, but still. Something that Germany was missing, a full 10-man recon squad, meaning these guys can fight on the front lines. Leo 2A4 recon tank. Basically a 2A4 with good optics. Very potent tank. For some of you wondering why is this in the vehicle tab, I think the reason for it is because it carries such a high volume of ammunition. And you're doing something seriously wrong if you need to use all the MG3s on your ATGM vehicle. As it carries the Mavericks underneath. Now there is one aircraft in the German air tab that is quite synonymous and already quite popular and well known amongst the community. It has been used to great effect by numerous people. This thing. And no, that is not a typo. That is the correct number of munitions that you're reading. It has cluster sub-munitions that blanket an area. Now before people go, this is broken, this is an OP unit, it can be countered very easily as it drops its payload more or less directly over the target. And if it's dropping directly over the target, yes, the units that are underneath it are more or less guaranteed to be dead if you haven't seen it coming in time. But the aircraft is more likely going to die if you have a good, strong, dedicated AA network. And even if you do, 190 points and you only get 2 of them in a card, once those 2 are gone, that's it. It can no longer hurt you. Anyway, this has been the 1991 mods during the US to Germany sort of recap review sort of thing. This is the end of part 1 for Blufor. The next video that will be going up will be covering Redfor from the Soviet Union to the Czechs. In the video after that will be Denmark going to Anzac. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you again next time.